My colleague Vuyo Mvoko, he's Newzroom Afrika's contributing politics editor. Also on the line to us is Asanda Ngoasheng, political analyst, joining us via our Zoom link. To both of you, thanks very much, but especially to Asanda, Vuyo. Asanda, I'm going to get to you in just a moment. Vuyo, why have this briefing now following an NWC meeting?
Well, as Junior correctly points out, it is the National Executive Committee of the ANC that is mandated with taking these sorts of decisions. The National Working Committee merely discusses, looks at trends, possibilities, and so on. But the people who are going to take the decision are yet to meet. But my understanding is that they felt that there's a lot going on social media. People peddling all sorts of theories, but also lies in between. So they felt that in the absence, if they leave a vacuum where the ANC does not engage publicly on these issues, even if it's just an update to say this is how far we've gone, then some of the lies that are being peddled on social media may end up being the truth, because their membership, but also other people who have an interest, obviously, in this story, are engaging with these lies. So that's why they decided to have the briefing.
Asanda, a good decision, it sounds like, given especially what Vuyo has said?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, you know, it's been interesting to watch, for instance, the whole Apartheid 2.0, which was trending on X just yesterday. I think they had to give a response, and we saw NEC member Lindiwe Sisulu yesterday giving interviews talking about, you know, their thinking around the DA. So I think that they fear a case where they may be having completely different conversations, but because people have speculated, it's going to be difficult to bring people back to the, you know, to thinking about exactly what it is that they're trying to do. And it sounds to me like they're going, as I said earlier, that it looks like they're going to go the way of the government of national unity, which is actually the safest option, because in that structure, you retain your 40%, which means you still get your majority, even though it's not a parliamentary majority. You also are not now facing a voter revolt with people saying, you know, we didn't want the DA, or we didn't want the EFF, or whatever other political party they will be aligned with. And so I think a government of national unity with multiple parties in collaboration with them is the best way. And I think it's a smart decision that it seems they're going. And of course, the markets, because we hate the markets in the sense that sometimes they can be anti what the people want. But, you know, we do have an economy that we need to consider. And I think the markets will also be quite happy with a government of national unity rather than, for instance, an MK plus EFF coalition, considering some of the policies of the EFF, especially the issue of land and land expropriation without compensation being something that a lot of international watchers are worried about. And I think, of course, voters not being happy potentially with the ANC collaborating with the DA, which they see as a racist party that's only interested in white interests and not ensuring that black people can start having access to economic opportunities.
And yet, Vuyo, despite what the markets say, despite what the DA says about this supposed doomsday coalition of the ANC, MK and the EFF, the ANC tells us that they are reaching out to the MK party. Yes,
they said they did reach out to, among others, the MK party. Of course, within the ANC, there's a very strong movement, especially among the elders, you know, the veterans, but also those who believe that the Jacob Zuma, a lot happened under the Jacob Zuma administration, which brought our country to where it is today. It will be a travesty if the MK party was to become part of whatever arrangement. But there are those who feel reach out to everybody, get, you know, everybody inside instead of, you know, outside the tent doing something, you know, inside the tent. So, but the talks have been exploratory, as Mahlengi Bengutsiri said today, to get a sense of where each of these potential partners stand. In other words, what will they insist on in order to see whether those demands can actually be entertained. But as Asanda says, they're leaning towards a government of national unity because, as one former official said to me at the weekend, the experience of coalitions so far at municipalities, especially at the metros, has been a disaster. Also because they feel that the ANC, he used the word blackmailed, has been blackmailed in a lot of these arrangements. So rather a government of national unity where people unite along a program or certain principles, where there's a definite buy-in instead of being strong-armed would be a better approach that would be good for the nation, because everyone will broadly agree on what needs to be done, say, over the next 5 years.
Vuyo's touched on it now just briefly, Asanda, but perhaps for our viewers, it might be interesting just to clarify what would be the difference between a coalition government and a government of national unity?
Well, I mean, I think in a coalition government, it's almost like a bilateral agreement or a multilateral agreement where you're agreeing with 2 or 3 or more political parties, and it is the policies of those political parties that then get pushed forward, and you might have to give cabinet, positions to some of these political parties, and also you might have to kind of compromise on certain issues. And so, for instance, if they go with the DA and the DA says, we want NSFAS to no longer be a grant, we want it to be loans instead, then they would have to do that, which would kind of in some ways go against the ANC government policy, but would be aligned with the DA policy. In a government of national unity, what you have is almost like a pro rata system, if I can call it that, wherein the political party's influence is almost equal to the percentage of the vote that they received. The politicians in government or members of parliament would have to sit and agree, these are the priorities for the country, and this is how we want the next 5 years to be. And then even in terms of voting, they would then you'd see the ANC's 40% playing quite a big role in that they'll probably get most of what they want, not all the time, but most of the time, because they have the largest number out of the 100%. But, one of the threats, for instance, that makes a government of national unity attractive is that whatever combination the ANC goes with, if the MK, as we're seeing now, is not talking to them or hasn't been able to engage with them, is out of it, there is the risk always that the MK and the EFF come together and form an opposition bloc, which effectively would block any and everything that's coming out of whatever coalition that there would be if they were not part of it. And the way to kind of mitigate this danger is definitely by having the government of national unity. One thing I also want to highlight is that, for all its faults and the corruption and everything else about the ANC, they actually do have a good track record of government of national unity. You'll remember that in almost every single government that we've had in South Africa, there has been at least one minister who doesn't come from the ANC. So we've had a National Party minister right at the beginning. Then we had a science minister who came from Azapo. Then we've had, we had the current political party leader, Patricia de Lille. And so the ANC as an organization has worked with ministers who are not ANC ministers, in fact, when they didn't have to. And so they have the practice and they have the engagement. And so from that perspective, you can see that the mechanisms would exist in the party for how to engage people who are not members of your political party, but are part of your government, which is a good thing for us as South Africans. And I think a government of national unity also provides stability and ensures that, each political party was given a mandate based on the percentage that they won. And so no political party will kind of be able to overreach, because one of the problems you have with the coalition government is that if an EFF is in government and they say we want the finance minister, that's an overreach, because the finance minister is a very important role and the EFF didn't get enough votes to get a finance minister. And so it will be kind of a trading system that would lead to them getting a finance minister. And if you remember, one of the biggest complaints in the municipal elections was how Al Jamaa ended up with a mayor, but only having one seat. Yeah, and people felt that that was kind of the destruction of democracy and not an exercise of democracy.
Yeah. The MK party with 39 seats in the national results, the EFF, sorry, I've got it the other way around. The EFF with 39 seats and the MK party with 58 seats, 97 seats for those two parties in the National Assembly, Vuyo. It's not something that would scupper the election of the president, but it could scupper things at provincial level, couldn't it?
Well, it could if that's part of the reason why the ANC, there's a preference. Predominantly, people are preferring a government of national unity, because if you are to get into a coalition, then you start getting into the provincial arrangements. In other words, someone says, give us the province, we'll give you, something else at national level, which the ANC is now trying to avoid. So let the provinces, let those be different spaces as well. Let conversations continue at that level. Remember also, because the tricky bit, there's also a pushback within the ANC. With each post or portfolio you give to someone else, you're taking away from your own, right? And people are scared because, there are fewer and fewer, positions like, ministerial positions come with a lot of power and influence, and that's where you also dispense patronage. So there are very real fears that affect people at a deeply personal level. So they are careful of that. So the preference for a government of national unity is also trying to deal with the provinces. What do you do at provincial level as well?
Certainly. Vuyo, the other issue for, I suppose, both the ANC and the DA, for example, which a lot of analysts and commentators are saying is perhaps the preferred coalition outcome for these talks. The trouble is that both parties have taught their supporters to hate the other party, right? The DA has taught its supporters to hate the ANC, and the ANC have done the same for the DA. This is now the political price that they must pay to their supporters for going into this coalition, if indeed it does happen.
Look, that's why you're hearing things like, it's in the interest of our country. It's in the interest of this, nation, because that's the only way they can counter it, and make it palatable to both their supporters. And that's why, you would have heard the spokesperson of the ANC a couple of times this afternoon saying it will be a government of not necessarily like-minded parties, but something that the voters, or something that the electorate is forcing us to do. The electorate is saying, it's spin, of course, but it starts to make sense. Says, the electorate said, let's work together.
Yeah, the results indicate that the South Africans want all parties to work together, because no party received an absolute majority to form a government alone.
That's make it ANC palatable to everybody. You can't argue against that.
Right.
You can't argue against working in the interest of this nation, even though we are sworn enemies.
Yeah, absolutely. Vuyo Mvoko is our contributing political editor, and Asanda Ngoasheng, she is a political analyst. Thanks very much, Asanda, for your time this afternoon.